everyone. It's Thursday and I am so ready for some chocolate. I don't know about you, but stress eating. So today I'm going to talk about Mashpi chocolate out of Ecuador. This is actually a really interesting company, and they very much appeal to the natural scientist in me, the botanist, because of what they are doing. They're more than just a chocolate company. So Mashpi was started by Alejandro and his wife Agustina. They didn't start out as a chocolate business. Mashpi started out as a land restoration conservation project. So where to start? Okay, let's do a little bit of background. So Alejandro grew up and was born in Costa Rica. When he went to university, he met his Ecuadorian wife, Agustina, and they moved to Ecuador. Now, Agustina's family, I believe, has some conservation history in there. And they purchased a piece of land that used to be used for cattle farming, and they began the process of regeneration. So they started off as trying to basically restore the rainforest. So if you look at a map and you look at South America, you've got South America, Brazil on one side, and then up near the northwestern side you have Ecuador, and on the northern kind of coastal area of Ecuador you run into what's called the Choco forest of Ecuador. The Choco has amazing biodiversity. It rivals, if not surpasses, that of the Amazon. Some people call it a cloud forest or rainforest. It's along the northern coast. It has a very high endemism rate, which means the flora and fauna found there are only found there and nowhere else in the world. So things like 20% of the vascular plants are only found in the Choco forest. So really, really high endemism, which is unique, and which is why rainforests are important. So they actually came to Ecuador to establish a small reserve and regenerate the rainforest. And they got this plot of land that was formerly used for cattle ranching, and one side of it had a river that ran along one side of it, and then it went back into more of a rainforest area. So they started off with planting bananas, which grow really fast and provide cover because they have those big banana leaves, and they grow quite fast and they produce quickly. And cassava. Cassava is not something we eat so much in North America. It's a starchy root. Tapioca. If you've heard of tapioca, tapioca is made with a kind of cassava plant. So those are the two things that they started planting, and that was because before they could plant a whole lot of things, they needed to regenerate the soil. So what happens in a rainforest is that the soil is constantly being added to and removed from, so that when the leaves drop off the rainforest, they decompose, but they're immediately sucked back up because there's so much flora and fauna that are using them in the rainforest. So in general, you usually need to regenerate the soil microbes and regenerate the soil when you start restoring the rainforest. So if you've ever watched a presentation by Alejandro, it's really interesting because he usually does it from his farm, and you can always hear in the background a chicken or a bird or dogs or whatever. There's stuff going on. There's life on his farm. And he talks about the scale in farming. So he talks about it starts with extractive, which is the conventional farming. Then it moves to efficient, which is where you're having limited impact. Then sustainable, which is where you're doing no harm, but you're also not being helpful. Restorative is where you're acting on nature, and regenerative is where you are acting just like nature. And that's where he wanted to get his plot of land when they bought it, I think about 15 years ago now. So they started with banana and cassava. They're having some success. They started to plant other trees and other fruit-bearing plants, papaya, palms, shade tree. So rainforests have canopy levels, and certain plants grow better at certain levels. So you can't plant an understory plant before you have the canopy plants to protect from the sun. And it's complex, and you have to have this whole system going on. It's really a system. It's a whole system, the rainforest is. It's not just one kind of plant, one kind of animal, one kind of bird. So they started doing this regenerative project. When they got interested in cacao, of course they looked at Nacional cacao, which is important to the country of Ecuador. It's their cacao. They have a lot of pride in growing it. It was wiped out by disease several years ago, had problems with disease, and so a lot of people told him that don't do it. Don't grow Nacional cacao. It won't grow. It will just deplete your soil. You can't grow it here. It's too cold at night. All kinds of people gave him all kinds of excuses. So they wanted him to plant what's called CCN 51 variety of cacao, which is a genetically bred kind of cacao for greater production, but also disease resistance. And when you plant this kind of cacao, it requires a lot of inputs, a lot of herbicides, fertilizers to go in to support it. And usually when you're planting it, it's a monoculture, which means you're planting all CCN 51 all throughout the whole thing, which is dangerous. I mean, if there's a fungus that comes through, you wipe out your whole entire farm. So he said, no, we're going to do this the regenerative way. We're going to plant the native Nacional cacao. But they wanted to know, there's several varieties. They said, okay, let's find out which one grows best on our farm. So they planted 30 varieties of cacao, and they were using this regenerative method. So they planted them amongst all their other plants that they had already planted. There was shade for the cacao to grow well. And what they discovered was that using the regenerative method, the cacao actually grew as well and produced at least as much, if not more, than what the monoculture CCN 51 was producing, without all the inputs going in, without the fertilizers, without the pesticides, the herbicides, using this regenerative method. So we actually had increased production where people expected it not to be. The other thing that happened when they began regenerative agriculture was that they noticed the rainforest coming back. So in 2009, they did a survey and they had 10 plant species. By 2020, it was over 300. With the reptiles, they couldn't find any in 2009. By 2020, they had 21 different species. Birds, which were important to Alejandro because he is an ornithologist. When they started in 2009, he counted 54 species. Now they have over 200 species of birds. When they started, the river on one side of their plot was in crisis. It would run dry for part of the year. But now it's stable. So this regenerative agriculture that they're doing has really regenerated the rainforest in their area. And because people in the area saw the success of their farm and what was happening on their farm, and that they could feed their family and sell crops and have a rainforest and have all these flora and fauna flourishing in this area, they said, hey, tell us about it. We want to do this too. So this became, and this was part of their goal in the beginning as well, a community sort of project. They share seeds with their neighbors. They teach courses on regenerative farming to their neighbors. They employ and empower local rural women. And because neighbors see that it works, they do it. And so it's so fantastic what they're doing. So when they started harvesting the cacao, they took the beans into their local, their place where they sell cacao beans, and they were appalled at the price that they were getting for these beans. It was so low. So they decided about 10 years ago to start their own chocolate company. And by doing that, they added value to their own economy. So they add value to their farm and their economy. They create jobs by making their own chocolate. So Agustina is the one that's kind of over the production of the chocolate. They do have over 30 different varieties of Nacional cacao. They don't separate them out. They blend them all together. They bring them all together when they make their chocolate. So I have a few interesting bars from them. So the one that you always hear about Chocolate Mashpi is their Cacao Pulp. I think that's the one I'm going to open today. Then you have Choco, Calamondan. Oh, I'm going to say this wrong. Gayabia? I'm horrible at pronunciations. My apologies if I've said that wrong. And then I also have this interesting one. Nibs with Salak. And when I flip their camera, and I'll talk about this one a little bit more, Salak is a kind of fruit. It's a really cool looking fruit, sometimes called the snake fruit. If you Google it and look at it, it looks like snake skin. It's really cool. Okay, so I'm going to flip the camera around and I'm going to open one of their bars and let's take a look. Okay, so this is the one that I'm going to try. So I'm going to set this aside for a minute and come back and try that one later. But I want to talk about the other ones because they have some interesting inclusions that you don't normally get in North America as much, that we may not be as familiar with. So this first one you may have heard of, Calamondan. You may also know it as a golden lime or a calamansi. It is a kind of citrus fruit. It looks like a mini orange. It's a cross between two different kinds of citrus. It looks like a mini orange. They use the zest in here. So, yeah, they use the zest. So it generally has a mild kind of lemony flavor to it by itself. And then you have the Choco, which if you look this up, you would get some interesting results. It means a few different things. But what it is it's actually a lupine bean. It's like a flat yellow bean that sometimes people eat pickled. It's very high in protein, higher than soy. And they grind it up as a powder and use it kind of as a milk, how you would use a milk powder in a regular milk chocolate bar. And so that's why this one is vegan. And they call this their superfood bar because it has that high protein in it and the cacao. So that's what that one is. And then you have this one that I'm going to mispronounce, the Gayabia. Gayabia, sometimes called sundrop, it's a bright orange fruit. It kind of looks like a persimmon, kind of, but brighter. It's sour. It smells almost like a lilikoi or a passion fruit. And it's interesting flavor if you've never had it before. Sometimes they put it in drinks in South America. So something to try, something unique to South American food. And then you have this, which I think I might also open later, Salak, which has a really fun botanical name. The botanical name is Salica zalica. Sounds very Dr. Zeusy, but yeah, that's it. Salica zalica is a kind of palm species. It's a really cool looking fruit. Like seriously, Google this fruit. It is about the size and shape of a fig, but the outside of it is literally looks like snakeskin, you guys, which is where the common name for this fruit comes from. It's called the snakeskin fruit. And it seriously does. It's a really cool fruit. It's got an edible pulp on the inside. It's sweet and acidic. It kind of looks like a mangosteen or a rambutan or a longan on the inside. And yeah, it's something that you don't normally see in my part of the world anyway. So that's fun. So I'm going to try and open that one too. Okay, so let's look at the cacao pulp. Obviously, because of Alejandro's regenerative methods, he is certified USD organic and also in the EU. This is a 65% cacao bar. They have won awards for it. Let's see, we got them on the sides. Ecuadorian organic chocolate. Yes, comes from Ecuador. On the back, we have, it's their Nacional cacao. So like I said, they have 30 different kinds of varieties of Nacional on their farm, and they just mix them together. Ecological sustainability for sure in the Choco rainforest. Let's see what else. Then you've got their ingredients. So you have cacao mass, raw cane sugar, cacao butter, and cacao pulp. So the cacao pulp comes from, if you've ever, so let's take a look at the inside here. So here's a pretty picture of the cacao, Theobroma cacao. So here's the pod if you were to cut it in half. Whoops. If you were to cut it in half. And then it has these rows of beans inside, but they're covered by a mucilaginous pulp, gooey pulp, and it's quite tasty. It's delicious, and people suck it off, and then inside is the cacao seed or the cacao bean, and that's where the pulp is coming from. It's on the outside of the seed. Okay, so let's open up the bar and see what we can see. When I take my bar out, I've had my bar for about a month and a half now. I think what's happened here is that it's dried up a little bit of the pulp in the middle. So I'm going to try this piece in the middle here. So here's the snap. Pretty good. Not bad. It's thin, so it didn't have a huge snap. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to warm this up a little bit to release some of the volatiles so that I can smell how the Nacional cacao smells. Okay, so when I smell this, I get a little bit of herbal, a little bit of the sugar and the cacao. It's got quite a dark color to it, but when you taste it, it's not as strong as it looks as it would be. Now, if you just taste the chocolate, it's just fine chocolate. There's absolutely, it's nice. There's no bitterness, not a lot of astringency. Well, I shouldn't say there's no bitterness. Very slight, pleasant bitterness. And you get a little bit of a sugar, sweet finish at the end. When you bite it with the cacao pulp, you get the tart tanginess of the pulp in there. I like this idea. I do like it. I think there's probably some issues with traveling where it can dry out, and it kind of ends up being like a pâté de fruit maybe in there. But overall, this is an interesting bar to try. I mean, you're not seeing a lot of makers with cacao pulp in there, and I would try this bar just for fun. It's a good bar. Okay, so I also want to open, it's a good bar, I keep popping pieces in my mouth, the Salak and nibs, because I was curious about this, to see what it meant. It says that, so it talks about the snake fruit and its cool skin. Oh, so it's dehydrated snake fruit. Okay, cool. Ah, I see. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I wonder how cool that would be to put that on something like brownies or bake with it. I'm going to put some in a little dish here. Take a look at it. Oh, it smells. Oh, this is definitely smells like Ecuadorian cacao for sure. Oh, it has a really nice fragrance and aroma to it. Slightly floral. So you can see these darker ones are the nibs. So what happens is when you roast the cacao beans, they turn dark, they dry out, and they turn into what's called a nib. The bean gets, when they break the bean apart. So this is basically just a crushed bean that's been roasted. So those are the nibs. Nice. When you taste them, they're perfect. They're roasted nicely. They don't have any off flavors. Not bitter, not astringent. This snake fruit is interesting though. I don't think I've never had dehydrated snake fruit. This is entirely new to me. So, here's what it looks like. The camera can focus on it. Just little pieces. And when I try it, it's almost like pineapple-y. I'm going to try one with the nibs together. This is really interesting. I could totally snack on this. Ecuadorian trail mix here, right here. This is good. I like that. What a fun flavor. It's like a floral pineapple flavor. I was expecting a little bit of astringency out of that snake fruit, but none there. Wow, that's super cool and really interesting. Yeah, I'm delighted by that. If only I could find a snake fruit in my area, I would totally show you guys what it looked like. But go and Google it because it's really cool. I'm going to flip the camera around and finish up. Okay, I had to pop another piece of the cacao pulp in my mouth. So that's Mashpi chocolate out of Ecuador. You can go visit them. You may go visit them. I don't know if you can right now. You can go down there and you can visit the farm. They do tours. You can volunteer. Lots of interesting things down there. A lot of bird watchers go down there because there's some interesting birds down there to see. I mean, 200 species of birds in a rainforest. Who wouldn't want to go see that? What else? So after 15 years, the farm is completely 100% regenerative cacao. Regenerative agriculture. The whole farm is regenerative. So they've done a really good job with restoring and maintaining the rainforest in their area, and they continue to teach others and to teach us who are removed from the rainforest about the rainforest, educate us why it's important to keep the rainforest and preserve them and how cacao and supporting them can do that. So that's Mashpi chocolate. Next week I'll have another chocolate maker for you. And if you like learning about the chocolate makers and different chocolate from all over the world, be sure to like this video and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.